Hey y'all. Hope you're well. Hope you guys had a great day. I am just getting on here to post about something that I had to pray on for a couple of days. So the last video that I did, I was talking about miracle signs and wonders and how God operates in miracle signs and wonders. Well, I gave some examples of, some of the things that God had done in my life when it came to the miracles in my life. So I wanted to elaborate on one of the things that I talked about. I wanted to talk about something that God had performed in our life as a really big miracle. There's a couple of them that God really did, but one of them was concerning my daughter. She's 15 now. And this was 2 years ago, right before God moved us to Texas. So one day, right before God moved us to Texas, I was sitting outside and I was on my computer and I was doing some things that I needed to do. And the Holy Spirit said, now is a good time to, no, he said, I want to give the exact words because that's part of another part. Um, I'm going to need you to fast. I'm going to need you to fast and pray from Sunday to Sunday. And it was a Sunday, I remember, and I was sitting in my front lawn and I'm just like, okay. And so I fasted from Sunday to Sunday. I didn't know why I was fasting. I didn't know why I was praying. I always prayed, I always got in my prayer closet and I prayed. But it was like an urgency in a way. And this is after God told me that he needed me to move to Texas. So there was a lot of things that were happening. And God still kept confirming his word. He still kept telling me to seek him, and to everything that he was telling me is right on point. And so my daughter has epilepsy, my 15-year-old. I don't claim it. I'm praying for God to heal her. He is a God that is a healing God, and everything will be healed in his time. And I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it was something. And so my daughter was off her medication because the pharmacy was supposed to deliver it. But it turns out that it was supposed to be coming through the mail and not through the pharmacy. So I had no medication for her. She looked really bad. And so I was like, I need to take her to the hospital. So I called 911 and they came and got her. And instead of taking her to the regular hospital, they asked me if I wanted to go to the children's hospital that she saw her neurologist at. And I said, yes. But usually the crazy thing is, this is how God stepped in. Usually you have to get a referral. So when I go to the regular hospital, then they have to get a referral to send her to children's hospital, but not this time. They gave me a choice. And so of course I said, yeah. It was a 45-minute drive. And so I'm sitting in the back and I'm talking to the ambulance guy. My daughter's sleeping. And then we get to the hospital. We stay there for a while. They tell me that they're going to run some tests and they're going to do all of these things. And then I said, okay. So we were there. They put us in a room. And then they said they needed to run an MRI on her. And I said, okay. So they took us to the MRI station. And when they took us to the MRI station, he told me, he was like, it'll be a few minutes. He said, I'm going to get, her comfortable. And then we're going to get her, MRI started. And I said, okay. So they led me to this waiting room, which was kind of small. It's kind of like a cubicle. And this is the part where God said, I walked in and I looked around and God said, now is a good time for you to start praying. And I started praying and I dozed off. And when I dozed off, I woke up out of my sleep because I heard code blue. And right away I knew it was for my daughter. I ran to grab the door handle, and before I could get there, the lady walked in. She's like, I don't know what happened. We were just doing the MRI. We're trying to revive her. We're doing everything that we can. And so there's like 30 people. They're doing they're performing CPR. They're doing everything. They're, jolting her. They're doing all of these things to bring her back. And I was in the hallway. And there was one nurse that said, you want to go sit down? And I said, no. And I started pacing the ground and I said, as loud as I got, with everything that I could, And I said, God, if this is your doing, you can have her because she is your child before she is mine. But enemy, if this is you, you cannot have my daughter. She does not belong to you. And I went into prayer. I went into prayer. I went into war for my daughter. And I understood why God wanted me to fast and pray. And I understood why God told me now's a good time to pray, because the enemy was after my child. And that was the longest 10 minutes of my life. My daughter was gone for 10 minutes on that hospital bed. And when they finally brought her back, when they finally brought her back, I went forward and I touched her leg, and she was so cold. She was so cold. She was cold, like, I mean, her body was ice cold. And all I could do was cry and thank God that he brought her back. And I was telling the nursing staff, I said, as someone that was in nursing, I said, I've heard a lot of code blues, but never in my life would I thought it would have been attached to my daughter. So when I talk about these miracle signs and wonders, it's not just something that I've read about. I rejoice when I hear other people's testimonies, but I also know what God has done in my own life. I also remember what he's done in my children's life. I know how I sit here and I pray and I war for my children. And sometimes it gets hard. It does. And as a single parent, I'm doing the best that I can. But sometimes I feel like, God, maybe I'm not doing enough. But then God reminds me that he loves these children and he entrusted me with them. But what I always tell God is, they're your children before they're mine. And I didn't know if God was going to give me back my daughter, but he did. And I'm grateful. She was 13 at the time. She's 15, almost 16 now. And it was a hard time, but I just get on here to tell you guys, to remind you how good of a God that we serve. How good of a God that we serve. And I know there are some parents that their children didn't make it. Something happened and their children didn't make it. That doesn't mean that God's not a good God. That just meant that your child had a special assignment that they performed, and they did, and God needed them back because he has another assignment for them up and with him. Sometimes we don't understand why God allows some children to live and some children to die. But I'll tell you what, he definitely elevated my faith. He elevated my faith. Oh, that's what we have to understand. When God is preparing us, when God is telling us to do certain things, it's for a reason. And we don't know why. A lot of people say, something told me, and I'm like, no, I got to give credit where credit is due. That's the Holy Spirit that's warning us. Hey, this is what needs to be done. God gives us warnings. Remember, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But we serve a good God that will warn us, that will tell us, hey, don't go down that way. Hey, take another way. Hey, don't do that. Hey, listen to your parents. Listen to the people that I've sent into your life to give you godly wisdom. We have to thank God for the people that he sent in our lives that give us godly wisdom, because sometimes we're so close to the situation and we're in it that sometimes we don't hear. So we have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to knowing who our first love is. The only God that sent his only begotten son, to die on a cross for you and for me. That's the kind of God that I serve. So when I'm talking about miracle signs and wonders, I'm talking about what I read in the Bible, but I'm also talking about the things that he's performed in my own life with my children. And that's just one of many. So when the Lord allows me to share more, I will share more, because I want your guys' faith to grow, just like he did that day for mine.